better off anyway, gastrointestinally, Nev. So you need to maintain what you've done. So that's the other big lesson in marathons, and never do anything on marathon day that you haven't tried in training, okay?
Yeah.
So there's no point with 12 weeks changing your diet, because you get runner's trots, which is basically you shit yourself when you run. And because imagine you're bouncing up and down. It's the only sport in the world where you bounce up and down your alimentary tract, and you get to 32 Ks when you hit the wall, and it feels like a bear that's come out of the crowd and jumped on your back, or a piano, some people say, and that's exactly what happens. So within 3 strides, you're thinking, I'm Nev and I'm Rocky Balboa and, whatever, Chariots of Fire, and then all of a sudden, your brain goes, stop. At his running camps, he's one of the best marathoners Australia's ever had. And went to 4 Olympics and blah, blah, blah. But he would say that anybody can go to the Olympics if you ran 200 Ks a week for 20 years.
Wow. Everyone, welcome back to the Strength Institute podcast, and also running a marathon mini-series. Today, my guest is Justin Barich, who I'm very lucky to have on the podcast today. So a little bit of a introduction for him is that he is a physiotherapist, and probably, in my opinion, Australia's top sports physiotherapist, and if not the top, definitely one of the top few. And he's got a really impressive resume from being the physio for the Western Reds NRL team, the Western Force Rugby Union team, the Wallabies when they were playing locally. We've also had him be a physio for NFL players for the New York Jets, Darrell Revis, amongst many other accomplishments and accolades there. And on top of everything, he's also a marathon runner, which is perfect for me, because it's someone else that I can pick their brains about. And I asked him just to give me some information in regards to his marathon running, and he's done over 10 competitive marathons. His best is a 2-hour and 48-minute marathon, which is pretty impressive. He's done the New York Marathon and several Boston marathons, including the one I believe you said that the bombing happened at, which is pretty intense. Yeah. Also placed 4th in Sydney for his age group in the marathon. So really a high-level marathon runner, a top-range physiotherapist. And thanks very much for jumping on with me.
No worries, Nev. Great to be here.
Yeah. So I guess you yourself weren't always a marathon runner. Matter of fact, when I was a youngster and you were taking care of me as I was progressing through my, junior and adolescence of rugby, you didn't resemble a marathon runner at all. And one day I had some time off and came back in, and you were a completely different man. And you had told me that you had started doing marathon. And, I didn't think much of it at the time. And now I've embarked on this journey myself. And I thought, well, I definitely need to reach out to Justin and ask him a few questions.
Sure, go ahead.
Well, first of all, I guess a couple different things. I'd like to touch on, nutrition, sort of running volumes and intensities, sort of workloads. But a really important one, injury prevention, which you'd be sort of the go-to guy for. Because
Sure.
The whole point of being able to do this is to be able to complete it, not just to burn out at week 6 with a hamstring or hip flexor injuries. So, in your opinion, what should I be trying to prioritize here? My nutrition, my actual training plan, stretching to stay on top of any little niggles that I do get. What do you think is the best thing that I should be focusing on?
Coming from a strength base is exactly what I used to do. So I was like you in the gym and played rugby, of course, and so I went from that somatotype, which is another interesting point, really, that anybody can run and there's no talent required. I used to do the medical for Steve Moneghetti when he had his running camps. He's one of the best marathoners Australia's ever had. And went to 4 Olympics and blah, blah, blah. But he would say that anybody can go to the Olympics if you ran 200 Ks a week for 20 years. And it's so true. Running is the most egalitarian sport there is. There's no talent required. It's purely, do you have the time, the effort, and the wherewithal to do it? So really it's how, and the beautiful egalitarian part is it doesn't matter about talent. It's how much training you do is how fast you run, ostensibly. And so results are the same. So if you want to go fast, you train more. And if you want to go slower, you train less. And same with body weight, really. Body weight's a big part, as you know, of VO2 max. It's all per kilogram. So the lighter you can be, the better. So, for instance, when I was playing rugby, I was probably 94 kilos and 4 or 5% body fat. And now I'm 4 or 5% body fat and probably race at about 68 to 70 kilos.
Wow.
So that's the fluctuations you can get from the human body. I have an experiment of one for myself. So basically anybody can do it, which is nice for your, gym people that can't go to the gym now. They can certainly take up running. As far as injuries go, the most important thing is graduation. So the normal rule of thumb with running is don't increase your mileage, and we work on mileage mainly, by 10% a week. So if you ran 10 Ks one week, you wouldn't go, you'd just add another kilometre on your total mileage for the next week. That'd be my first thing, to not get injured and end up at the practice. The other thing would be to run every second day. If you run every day, you tend to break down, and stress fractures and overuse injuries abound. So just like in the gym where we don't train body parts, within 48 hours of each other because they're still in that catabolic state, you give yourself 48 hours off to recover and do something else. If you've only got 12 weeks to get a marathon, on that in particular. So most programs are 16 weeks for marathon. So 12 is cutting it a little bit fine, but someone as fit as yourself with other interests like jiu-jitsu and things like that, and you're more limber than most would be fine, I'm sure. But keep in mind, most people give it a good 4 months. Is a normal training base to build up. And before that, they've probably got a base of a month before that. And most elite marathoners run only one marathon, if you're lucky, 2 a year. And that's about as much as you could ever do, and your client should ever really do, unless they're going to end up broken again for the same reasons of overuse, Nev.
Sure. Well, I guess, the first thing I wanted to touch on, and that 10% did come up in my previous podcast with Mike Laurie, who is a professional triathlete who I was asking some questions with. He said, trying to go more than 10% a week increase to avoid those injuries or unnecessary injuries.
Yep.
I guess the issue is with only doing a 12-week program, even if I was to do a 16-week program, is that I'm coming from a spot of basically no running training. Like you said, I've been doing jiu-jitsu. I've got a reasonable endurance base, but running's a different ballgame. And the first week was sort of interesting, figuring out, what was burning out first, my lungs or my legs and everything like that. Yeah. My programmed weekly increments do go up by more than 10%. So I've finished my first week. I've just started my second week of training. I am doing basically every second day. So between 3 and 4 runs a week, 2 shorter and 1 longer, or 3 shorter and 1 longer. My question is, should I go up by the 15 to 20% per week that I have to be able to get to a marathon distance over the 12 weeks? Or should I take let's say my week 2 training up significantly so that from that point I can increase by only 10% per week?
I think the 10% is still the rule to take. It just depends on how fast you want to run. And really, that's all it is. If you want to run fast and run really quick, then you want to do you can go up 15 or 20%, but that would be an equal increment, linearly related injury risk. So okay. You run further, you're going to bust quicker. And for a big guy, you want to be careful. So they're the 2 downsides. Yeah, if you wanted to get really scientific about it, if you're an elite athlete coming back from injury, I ran the New York Marathon with a stress fracture in my knee once. And I had trained in the pool for 8 weeks before that. I didn't even step foot on the ground. So the last 8, and in fact, actually 12 weeks, I didn't actually touch the tarmac. And I flew to New York and worked the jets and then ran, and I was fine. So I kept up my aerobic fitness in the pool, which a lot of people think they can't do, but you actually can. So you get a pool belt on and work in the pool. And so you don't have to, you can cross-train with something I'd suggest if you want to push for time. So bike work in between, or running in the pool, just to unload your body, because you are a big guy. If you're the smallest person and skinny, then it's not a big deal. You could probably increase those increments faster. But nearly the biggest trick of the marathon is to get to the start line without being injured. But nearly everybody is. So everyone's carrying something, just like in any elite sport.
Just like in rugby.
Exactly. Just like every sport there is. Jiu-jitsu, UFC, someone's going with a broken hand, someone's going with a broken jaw. And that's just sport. And you wouldn't get to where you were if as a world champion or as an elite athlete, unless you had some sort of injury and that you were masking and hiding and not telling your physio and overcooking it. So they're the big things. The other tips that I'd say that are important to not get injured in the first place is shoe selection. Obviously, to have the right shoe for your biomechanics is very important, and also to rotate them. So a lot of people don't know, but shoes generally last about 800 kilometres. So if your shoes have done that, if you could log them, and they've done more than that, get rid of them. And the best investment you can have, you find a shoe you like, is actually buy 2 pairs, because it takes 48 hours, the studies show, for the shock absorption to come out of your shoe. So if you rotate them, you get the full use out of your foam and the less shock on your body. And that's been shown in many studies. And also it keeps your shoes fresh and feeling nice and springy for when you use them. And also they last longer. So those shoes will last you twice as long as if you bought 1 pair, wore them out, got another pair, wore them out. and also keeps them drier, so you don't get foot disorders, fungus disorders, and toenail problems, and the like, bacterial disorders, all those sort of things. So rotating your shoes is really important, and even mixing up your shoes. So if you have a support shoe and then a less supportive shoe and one with a higher heel raise, it's called a drop. So you can have 11 mil drop from the front to the back of the shoe. So the more height you have, the more it'll be unload your calves, for instance. So if you mix up your shoes, it can be a better thing. So you can have, because your body doesn't get used to wearing out the same line of your knee or your hip or whatever is your problem area. So mixing it up, which is, you know, like orthotics, if you like, but using a different shoe. So your shoe's going to hit the ground differently, and you're going to train differently. Your cadence will be different. Your foot strike will be different.
Sure.
So
No, that's
really important.
Yeah, that's great advice. I do know that for the running shoes that I'm using currently, you know, I went down, I think it was like, you know, athlete's foot, where you walk on the, I think it's athlete's foot, where you walk on the, that little treadmill there, and it sort of maps out how you roll. So I did have a bit of a roll, and they gave me some shoes with a bit more, some New Balance ones, a bit of a bit more support along the inside. Now, is that good enough? Or should I be going to see a podiatrist to get them to look at my feet? What would you recommend?
Funnily enough, because we got sick of that sort of thing, and a lot of orthotics are made, and they're quite rigid, and they're big, they don't fit in your shoes, they're very expensive, and often they're moulded with people in a non-weight bearing position on the bed with plaster cast, and they can be problematic because, of course, when you got 33 bones in your foot, when you stand up, they change and become close packed, and then when you walk, they become different again, and when you run, they become different again. We have our own system from Canada, where we run on a force platform, and it makes these better orthotics, which are slimmer and fit in your shoes, and actually allow you to pronate and then spring back. So they have a bit of give in them with different algorithms for golf, for ice skating, and all sorts of things. So if you did have biomechanical problems, that would be the way to go, and that's the most cutting edge, because I got jack of setting people off and they spent $1,000 on an expensive doorstop because they couldn't tolerate them. But in 12 weeks, you're probably not going to have the turnaround time to do that. Long term, if you wanted to keep running, then it's something you want to address as a big fella. But if you've got shoes that support you, then they will be enough. But keep in mind that every run you take, you're getting less and less support from the shoe. And also lacing is very important. So if you've got a normal shoe, there's 2 holes at the top of the shoe. So that's often not used. So you've got to loop your shoe around on both sides, and then put the 2 holes through each other. So you're holding your calcaneum, your heel, on the back of your shoe. Yeah, and that gives you a lot of support. So there's those 2 holes at the top of your shoe are to be used, and no one ever does. I've never had anybody in a quarter of a century of doing what I do have actually used those holes, and they hold your heel back into the shoe. And also, do you want me to show you quickly?
Yeah, matter of fact, I'm going to grab my shoes right now. Yeah. You know what? I think I'm perpetuating the bad thing here. There's definitely a hole that's not being used.
Correct. So what you've got now, I'll just grab a pair of mine, of the million pairs of shoes that I've got. So if you can see there.
Yes.
So basically the shoe, the lace goes in and then out on that side.
Yeah. And
then you cross over, and that lace becomes like that.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
It does make sense. Yeah. All right. Because they've left that. Well, you can't. My shoe's dark, but yeah, they have left that last hole out.
They nearly always do. So you just lace them up normally, and then when you get to the top, you just get a loop like that.
Yeah.
Yep. And then a loop like that on the other side.
Perfect.
Yep. And then you put that hole through there, that lace through there, sorry. And if you can see, then when you pull it tight, it's going to tourniquet the front of your heel, or the front of your ankle, back into the shoe. Okay. And that's where your money is all in the back of the shoe, do you understand? So when you're held back there, that's going to stop you pronating, which is that. And also what's really important is it doesn't smash your toenails at the end of your shoe. Nearly always rookies will lose their toenails and use it as a badge of courage. It should never happen. It's a lacing issue. It's never, and the other thing too is when you get a pair of shoes, you should have your thumbnail, not the thumbnail of the little 16-year-old girl at athlete's foot, but your thumbnail at the front of your shoe when you're standing up. Okay. Because when you run a marathon, your foot expands a whole shoe size.
Really?
It does, yeah. Just through swelling. Makes sense, yeah. So if you're really quick and running a 3 or 4 hour marathon, it's a lot of blood going down to your feet, and there's a lot of swelling and vasodilation going on, and it spreads to your toes, and then your toenails come off. And that's a common complaint. You'll often see marathoners and there's this big blood patch over here. And people think, oh, you know, how good's that? But, you know, those black toes never go away and their toenails fall off. But that little lacing technique stops that immediately.
Fantastic. Well, thanks very much. I'm definitely writing that one down. That's the first thing I'm going to change before my next run.
Well, exactly. And it makes the shoe, that's how the shoes are designed. That's how the people at ASICS and at New Balance want you to wear them. But no one gets told to lace them up because it takes an extra 30 seconds in the shop. And sadly, people don't use their equipment properly. So, but for running, all you need is a pair of shoes.
Yeah, absolutely.
So everything else is optional.
Yeah,
So
fair enough.
And that's the most, for injury prevention, they're the most important things. The other thing you mentioned was stretching. Not a huge fan of stretching. I think stretching is only really necessary. And elite sport, we kind of stopped doing that 20 years ago, really, where everyone just stands around stretching. But, you know, if someone identifies like yourself or me or something that you've got an imbalance, say a hip flexor's tight, pulling you into a lordosis in your back or an issue that's medically, you know, observant, then stretch. But really with running, the beauty of running is the warm-up, especially when you're doing a marathon. You don't want to be stretching and running before a marathon. You want to save all your calories and all your energy for the actual race. So don't do anything. The first mile of the marathon is your warm-up, trust me. So just go slow. And then if you think you're going slow, go slower again, because you can't bank miles. So if you run out quickly at the start, you're gonski. And the best way is the negative split, to be honest. So negative split means to run the back end faster than the front end. And it's very difficult to do because nearly every marathon's exciting. You get pumped and you're feeling good. And you get the 32 Ks when you hit the wall and it feels like a bear has come out of the crowd and jumped on your back, or a piano, some people say. And that's exactly what happens. So within 3 strides, you're thinking, you know, I'm Nev and I'm Rocky Balboa and, you know, whatever, Chariots of Fire. And then all of a sudden, your brain goes, stop. So starting slow is the best warm-up in running. And the best warm-up in running is running slow. So you run a slower cadence. And then after a K or a mile, maybe 1.6 Ks, start to feel a bit of a sweat on your brow. That's your warm, and then you can start to push the pedal down. And really, if you wanted to stretch, so if you had a calf injury or something, you're carrying an injury, that's the time to stretch, is once you're fully warm and sweating, pull over, stretch whatever you need to, ITB, calf, hip flex or whatever, and carry on Columbus.
Yeah,
but don't spend hours cold stretching, because all that does, and it even decreases performance, they've shown. So, you know, for Olympic athletes running 100 meters, for instance, if you stretch beforehand, you actually go slower. And as you know, with power athletes, you know, you want fast twitch up the wazoo. You don't want anything slack and slow. You want it fast.
Yeah, dynamic warm-ups only, basically.
Yeah, exactly, dynamic. But I would say in running, it's irrelevant. So you don't even need a warm-up in running. Your running is the first mile, and just settle in, because it's all about, marathon running is all about energy conservation and leaving as much glycogen in your system as you can, because you can only carry 32 Ks of glycogen, then you run out. And that's what the important thing is, when you hit the wall and blow up and your body starts to catabolize fat, and that takes more oxygen, and then you get exhausted. And that's why the last 10 Ks of marathon, no matter who you are, whether you're Robert De Castella or, you know, a 6-hour marathoner, it's a punish. So everyone's hurting those last 12 Ks.
Yeah, no, I believe it. Well, that's some great tips so far. And we did touch on it before. You know, I am heavier. I started this whole thing at about 103 kilos. I'm down to, after the first week and a half, 101. And my intent is to, by the time I get to the actual marathon day, I'm going to be probably closer to 90 or high 80. So definitely a fair bit of weight drop, which I know will 100% help.
Absolutely. That'll be the biggest thing you can do, is to eat light. I mean, I'm vegan, so that's the other thing too that people don't realise. I think you have to have special diets or something. I've been vegan a long time, and as I'm sure you know, a lot of people are, and I haven't had a problem with it. So, you know, just eating clean is good, and eating light is good. And the lighter you can be on race day, the better your body will be. And when you come back to do jiu-jitsu, you'll be unbeatable.
Absolutely.
Because 20 kilos, a lot of fighting guys, and you'll be equally as strong. You won't lose any strength.
Well, I'm still doing my gym sessions, so that's important. But with your diet, you know, being vegan or not, I mean, this was something that I was thinking about. Oh, should I go ketogenic, because then I can just metabolize? You know, I've got a lot more fat to burn through. I decided just to stick with a normal diet, just eat healthily.
Yeah, and you're better off anyway, gastrointestinally, Nev. So you need to maintain what you've done. So that's the other big lesson in marathons: and never do anything on marathon day that you haven't tried in training. Okay. Yep. So there's no point with 12 weeks changing your diet, because you'll get runner's trots, which is basically you shit yourself when you run. And because imagine you're bouncing up and down. It's the only sport in the world where you bounce up and down your alimentary tract, and that will make you shit yourself. So I've had, you know, multiple decades of training of doing that, and now I can eat anything, and I could have a hamburger and go for a run. It wouldn't matter. But someone like you, if you're used to being a specific diet and then go running on it, you're pulling over and you go out with 2 socks on, you come back with 1 sock.
Oh dear, oh dear. Now, do you track your weekly calories and your carbohydrate intake? I know we're trying to keep that glycogen.
And when I say vegan, I'm really just plant-based. So I just eat plants basically. So no, I don't track my carbs because they're all carbs. So I don't think it's necessary to eat more carbs. What is necessary on race day and is definite an ergogenic aid that can make you run faster is the carbohydrate gels, which I'm sure you're aware of.
Yeah.
So that's shown to help, and if you can have one of those every half an hour, they're really good. So I'll be packing, depending on how far you're going to run, I'll be having one of those every half an hour. But again, you have to do it in training, and you have to have it with that bouncing up and down. And some people can't tolerate them. And some people think you have to have carbs, like in a carbo shop for $6. You don't. You can eat jelly beans, you can eat hard lollies, you can eat bananas, whatever your stomach likes. It can be, cheap stuff. It doesn't matter. Cordial is just as good as Gatorade. As long as it's got the sugar content, it's fine. And as long as you can carbo load before it, you're fine too. So the body doesn't know the difference between pasta and rice. It doesn't care as long as it's carbohydrate. But what is important is water intake. So a lot of people don't know you can take on 1 gram of carbohydrate. You need a milliliter of water as well. So you've got to drink. So when you drink, you take on the carbs, and then you'll feel a little bit bloated on race day. You'll feel a couple of pounds over. You'll think, oh, I feel sluggish and terrible and emaciated. And that's when you know you're ready to race, because you'll need those in the last 12 Ks.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough.
So diet, not that vital, but if you're trying to lose weight, absolutely do whatever diets have worked for you in the past, and try not to overcook yourself. But you'll find you'll get hungrier anyway, because running is a different beast to the gym. You can get voracious appetites and really desire the sugars. So and you can feel free to indulge if you're losing weight. Then you can indulge yourself. But obviously, as you already are, I'm sure you're eating clean as a whistle anyway. So low fat, and what is the way to go, as it always is with everything, really.
Fair enough. Well, Justin, that's some really helpful information for me. Are there any other tips and tricks that you should let me in on before I let you go here?
Yeah. What else? I mean, like I said, just not using anything that you haven't used in training is very important. So how far are you planning on running, like your distance, your furthest distance in training?
Yeah, so basically I've got set up 2 to 3 small runs, 1 long run. Now, the first week's long run was only 6 Ks because it was my first run in quite some time. It's 10 Ks this week, 14 Ks next week, and then I do have a deload on week 4 where I bring my total kilometers down a little bit. Basically, the plan was to, by on week 10, have my long run, still do short runs, but have my long run be 30 kilometers. So, 3/4 mark.
Yeah. That's what I was so you want to go,
week and a half
as many as you can go, the better. Everything is about the long run. So the mileage during the week is just to set you up for a base so that you don't break for the long run. And the long run is where the real training takes place. So you want to suffer as long as possible, really. And it's more about time in that regard. So if you're running 30 Ks, you can go slower as long as you try and get a run in. It's about the time you're going to be on your feet for the marathon, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
So if you're running 30 Ks, but running really slow, then that's probably what you want if you're going to be running X amount of time for the marathon. So, but you definitely want to do as many 30K long runs or close around that as you can get. If you're in a normal training cycle of 16 weeks and running sub-elite sort of times, then you want to be doing probably 4 of those and going up to 32 Ks, but nothing over that, because the last 10 Ks is just a punish, and you can't really close without breaking something. So that's something that it's a brain thing. And really the whole idea of running is anxiety. So when you run, it's just your brain saying stop, 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 and you ignoring it. And that's all when you see running in that vernacular, that it's nothing more than anxiety reducing or anxiolytic. You've just got to convince yourself that you can keep going, you're not going to die. Because your body will tell you, trust me, that you are dying and you need to stop immediately.
I'll fight the urge.
And there's always guys, I mean, back to when they used to do the City of Surf was 12 Ks, and people think that was a long way. And, and then there was guys like Dean Karnassus came out and he could run, 300 Ks and going, what? How does someone do that? And they used to think, women shouldn't run, like the first woman run the Boston Marathon, Catherine Schweitzer and Rhona Gibb, they thought their uteruses would fall out. when they were running. So there's been ridiculous things about running, but to be honest, we're designed to run, and running is fine as long as you build it up slowly. The one that also important thing for people to know is that there's no science behind running wrecks your knees or your joints or gives you osteoarthritis. In fact, all the studies show the exact opposite. The runners have more pristine knees when they do cadaveric studies on dead marathoners. They have 20% thicker cartilages in their knees. So running doesn't wear out your knees. It doesn't wear out your hips and your back. It's actually a fantastic thing to do for your joints and to keep your body fat down, and the most efficient exercise we have. So, and also the big side that everybody misses is the mental health side. So, which is really why I run, is for stress release and anxiety. So, a good half an hour run through all the studies have shown to be more effective than any antidepressant that Big Pharma has produced in America. And you can get that for free. Those opioids, you don't get that most places. You have to push pretty hard in the gym to get that. As you would know, it'd be a big squat session, you'd get some maybe, or a big bench session and
Sure.
break a record. You can go for a half an hour run and smash yourself and come out feeling exactly as if you've had some opioid in your brain. And that's all for free. And it's in a healthy environment too. So as long as you don't overcook it, things are okay. But the naysayers that say running is bad for your knees and you're going to have osteoarthritis is rubbish. There's no evidence at all that I've ever come across that anyone's ever been able to show me that was a real study that showed any of that. That's just all bunk.
Well, I'd have to assume it's the same as weights. Your body is fantastic at adapting. So when you put it under stress of squatting weights, it doesn't break you. It makes your bones stronger. So
it does, which is what we do with elite athletes all the time. and sadly, the narrative is that they get injured and usually have surgery, most of them unnecessarily. And then once they've had surgeries, they have osteoarthritis caused by the surgery, and then they get sacked because they've turned 40 or 30, an arbitrary figure that people put on them. Like, for instance, I'm 50, but I can, when I run, I run times faster than, people half my age. And it's not because I'm superhuman, it's just because I, enjoy running. So it's a very important message for all your clients that it's ages. Like, I've run marathons with guys at 82, and you don't get heart attacks, you don't drop dead, no one does. It's a great thing, and same with exercise. Like your dad, like Dusan.
Well, he's going to be going ideally for his he's going to be going for a world record squat attempt this November in powerlifting.
At what age?
73 he'll be.
So an age really is a number. I've been doing this a long time, and so people that believe that they're old, and people that don't, they don't. So, if you think you can, you think you can't, you're right. And that's, Henry Ford said that, and it's so true. So if you want to run, if you want to do gym, but don't let anyone tell you otherwise. The other thing there was a guy called Noakes, Dr. Noakes, who wrote The Law of Running, and which is the biggest book. In fact, actually, now that I see it's right here, when I say biggest book, this is how thick it is.
Yeah,
South African running. And the first thing he says is, don't take any advice from anyone medically about running unless they run.
Right.
And it's the same with gym. So unless your doctor or your physio or your podiatrist or someone has actually lifted a barbell up a few times or been in jiu-jitsu, don't let them tell you what you can and can't do, because the human spirit and the human body can do anything if you let it. But if we all said what people told us, no one would look like you, that's for sure. So that's a great message, and it really pays out well for running. It's especially with COVID-19, I've seen so many more people running now. It's hilarious because they can't go to the gym.
That's right.
They've even closed Jacob's Ladder, because they used to have buildings like you going up and down with their beautiful girlfriends, and there's too many guys doing their squats and stuff, and they couldn't fit them on Jacob's Ladder, so they actually had to lock it, because they couldn't be social. But it's great to see, and I think with this virus, when everyone comes back, hopefully a lot of people will be overweight from doing nothing. But I think some people might have got a new regimen from people like yourself and doing these sort of podcasts that they can say, you know what, I can do this, and off they go, because they've got nothing else to do. So you've got plenty of time for the first time in their lives.
That's it. So and I keep saying it's so important to set a goal, to keep yourself on track. Otherwise, it's easy just to stay at home on the couch all day. You have a goal, you make a plan, and that's what's going to keep you accountable.
Exactly. Absolutely. Yeah. Accountability is the key. And the other thing for runners too is a runner's diary. Just like in the gym, you're writing down how much you just benched. It's exactly the same with running. So the other good things to do there too, actually, as a training tool, if you want to pursue this, is taking your resting heart rate in the morning. Most watches do them now. I've got a Garmin that does it for me. But
me too.
Yep. Dingo, twinsies. But if you take your resting heart rate and if it increases 10% as a rough guide, then you probably don't have to run that day. You've done enough on the last, if you did a hard training run or a speed session, for instance. We won't talk about speed sessions today because it doesn't matter, but if you did go running, you'd probably do one speed session a week. But and a aerobic session more, what do you call it, anaerobic threshold sort of sessions. But anyway, so if you were training, you'd want to, if you increase your heart rate's gone up 10% overnight than usual at your resting, then you probably could have a day off and rest, go do something else.
Okay.
And that goes in your journal every day. And also when you run, you write down how far you ran, how you felt, and little things like that. And going back on those journals, as you know, with weights, exactly the same. You can pick up, trends and things and how your shoes went and saw this person ran that run, whatever. And that's quite important to be accountable too. And you can look back and, and have a look and see the days you didn't run, you go, well, should have run that day. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, Justin, thank you so much again for jumping on. I really appreciate your time and your advice. And I'd love to touch base with you again in like a month or so, just to sort of see how things are tracking.
Absolutely, yeah. Just write down keep your journal going. Write down your questions anytime. We'll tee off whenever you like and go to the next level.
Fantastic. Thanks very much, Justin. Have a good one, mate.
Cheers. Good to see you, buddy. Keep punching.